Welcome in, everyone, to Lively Lewis Stories.
That's right. We're back with even more awesome adventures with Levi and Ivy.
Set your storytime meter to fun and get ready to join the Lively Lewis crew.
All you need is your imagination and...
Off we go! I can't wait to see where our story takes us today.
Have you ever wanted to get more Lively Lewis in your life?
Well, we've got you covered.
Grab an adult and zoom over to livelylewisshop.com.
Or just click on the link in our show notes.
Enough about that. Let's get to today's super Lively Lewis story.
The story you're about to enjoy was inspired by Hazel. Thank you so much for your awesome idea. Levi ran out of the house with his backpack on and his pillow under his arm. "Mom, I'll be waiting in the car," shouted Levi as he made his way down the front stairs and into the driveway. "Okay, I'm on my way," Levi's mom called out. "Just looking for my keys. They're not on the hook where they usually are." Just then, Ivy walked around the corner from the playroom and handed her mom her keys. She knew it was the right thing to do because moments before she had just taken them off the key hook by the front door to stop her mom from leaving. Well, actually, she really wanted to stop Levi from leaving. And even though Levi wasn't doing anything wrong, Ivy just couldn't help but be upset. "Why does Levi get to go?" asked Ivy as her mom took the keys from Ivy's hand. "First off, did you take my keys off the key hook?" Ivy's mom asked with a look of surprise on her face. "Maybe," answered Ivy, looking down at the ground. "I'm sorry. I'm just upset. Why does Levi get to go?" Ivy's mom sat her daughter down on the couch because she knew they needed to talk this out. "We went over this before, Ivy," started her mom. "Levi gets to go to a sleepover at his friend's house because he's old enough to do that. Someday soon, you'll be old enough for the sleepover too. It's just not that day right now." "I'm not old enough to do anything fun," said Ivy in a huff as she crossed her arms. "I wouldn't say that," said Ivy's mom. "You're old enough to ride a two-wheel bike, you're old enough to go down the big twirly slide at the playground, and you're old enough to help me make chocolate chip cookies. Don't you remember when there was a time that you weren't old enough to do those things?" Ivy didn't feel much like talking, but knew her mom was right and nodded her head. "You waited to do all of those things, and when you got to be the right age, you did them and had fun," said Ivy's mom. "And I know you can wait for a sleepover too." "I can't wait. I want to be older right now," Ivy whispered under her breath, but her mom heard. "Ivy, you have to understand we have rules in this house, and Levi is now old enough to have a sleepover at his friend's house," said Ivy's mom. "Please don't be upset because Levi is doing something fun. We can do something fun here together tonight, and sooner than later, you'll be heading out that door for your first sleepover." As Ivy's mom said that, Levi popped his head back in through the front door. "Mom, hurry up! I can't be late for my first sleepover." "That would be rude," said Levi. "If I'm late, I may miss out on playing video games, eating popcorn and candy, and watching the outdoor movie." "Video games? Popcorn? Candy? Outdoor movie? What?" exclaimed Ivy. "I knew sleepovers were fun, but that sounds amazing." She sunk down on the couch cushions even more as her mom took her keys and walked toward Levi. "Please say goodnight to Levi," said Ivy's mom. And at that moment, Ivy wasn't just jealous of Levi anymore. She was also sad. Sad because she just realized that this would be the first night ever that she would be sleeping in her house alone without Levi. That had never happened before. Who would she brush her teeth with at night? Who would she share a bedtime story with? And who would she do her special Ivy and Levi bedtime handshake with? Ivy didn't want to let Levi know how sad she was, so she stood up from the couch, holding back her tears, and said goodnight to her brother. Levi was so focused on his first sleepover that he wasn't even thinking of their bedtime handshake, their bedtime story, or even what brushing his teeth at another house that night would be like. "Night, Ivy!" yelled Levi as he turned and ran out the door. Ivy's mom then watched as Ivy ran up the stairs and disappeared around the corner. She knew how she was feeling, jealous, sad, and alone. Ivy and Levi were very close, but with Levi being the big brother, he got to do everything before her. "I'll be right back, Ivy. Dad's in his office if you need him," shouted Ivy's mom up the stairs as she headed to the car. Upstairs in her room, Ivy laid on her bed as a tear ran down her cheek. "Levi doesn't even care about me anymore," said Ivy to herself. "He didn't even ask to do our special bedtime handshake before he left. I wish I was older, that I could go have fun at a sleepover, and Levi could stay home wishing he could go. But I'd be a good big sister. I'd give him a hug before I left, and I'd for sure do our special bedtime handshake. I'd even read a bedtime story with him, even though it's not even dinner time. Yup, I wish I was older. I'd be a great big sister. Ivy laid in her bed until she heard her mom walk back into the house. Ivy, what would you like for dinner tonight? Asked her mom, hoping that decision would start to make Ivy feel a bit better. Anything you want, even waffles for dinner, with chocolate cake for dessert. Ivy slowly made her way down the stairs toward her mom, who was sitting on the couch. That sounds fine, answered Ivy. Just fine? Those are two of your favorite things, said Ivy's mom, seeing now that Ivy needed more than just a fun dinner to work through her feelings. What do you think Levi is doing right now? Asked Ivy. Well, he's been there about 10 minutes, so probably not anything too unbelievable, giggled her mom, trying to make Ivy feel better. Please don't be upset all night, Ivy. I think we can have a lot of fun tonight. Just me, you, and Dad. We can have our own sleepover right here in the living room. How about that? But we basically have a sleepover every night, said Ivy. We live in the same house after all. But I know you're trying your hardest to make me feel better, and I do appreciate it. Ivy's mom gave her daughter a hug, knowing sometimes that words and tasty dinners aren't enough. We'll have fun tonight, I promise, said Ivy's mom as she walked into the kitchen. How about you help me make the chocolate cake? Okay, at least I'm old enough to do that, said Ivy with a little smile. Thankfully, as the night went on, Ivy's mood improved. Dinner was great, and a living room sleepover with her parents was more fun than she thought. They played video games, ate popcorn and candy, and even watched a movie. Before long, Ivy was yawning and had almost forgotten what had made her so upset earlier. Then her mom's cell phone rang. It was Levi calling to say goodnight to his mom and dad. Once she heard his voice, Ivy remembered exactly what she had been upset about. Hey friends, what do you think Ivy was feeling? You think she was upset again now? Let's find out. I think we had a great night, said Ivy's dad to Ivy as he ended his call with Levi. What did you think, Ivy? Asked her mom. Ivy couldn't deny it was a lot of fun, but now all she could think about was Levi at his sleepover. It was great, Mom and Dad. Thank you. She said with a big yawn, giving them each a hug before crawling into her sleeping bag. But as she settled down, Ivy couldn't help but think about how much more fun it would be if she had been having a sleepover with one of her friends. Ivy closed her eyes and drifted off to sleep quickly, all the time wishing she was older. And when she finally fell asleep, something amazing happened. Ivy quickly opened her eyes, thinking she had just woken up in the middle of the night. However, as she looked around, she realized it wasn't nighttime anymore, and she was in her play clothes, not her PJs. Ivy, can you come outside with me? Called a voice from the kitchen. It sounded like Levi. Well, that is if Levi were a lot younger. It was then that Ivy turned around and saw something she wasn't expecting. It was Levi, but he was young. Like a lot younger than he was when he left for a sleepover. Levi, what is going on? Asked Ivy. Why do you look like that? And why aren't you at your sleepover? Look like what? Replied Levi. And you know I can't have sleepovers yet. Stop trying to get me upset. Levi then stomped toward the stairs, calling out for his mom. Mom, Ivy keeps talking about her sleepover, yelled Levi up the stairs. And she's saying I look weird. Ivy, be nice to your little brother, called back from her mom. Ivy couldn't believe what she just heard. No, I didn't mean you look weird, just different, said Ivy. You look young. Obviously, Ivy, I'm your younger brother, said Levi. That's when Ivy realized something was up. Was this a dream? Or did her wish come true? Was she now the older sister and Levi was the younger brother? Whatever it was, she definitely liked the sound of it and wanted to see what it felt like to be the older sister. Yeah, of course, said Ivy with a big smile. I'm the older sister and you're the younger brother. She really liked the way that sounded and had a few more questions for Levi. So, why did you ask me to go in the backyard with you? Asked Ivy. What's wrong with you today, Ivy? You know Mom and Dad said I'm too young to play in the backyard by myself, answered Levi. Right, I forgot, replied Ivy. And what's this about a sleepover? Ivy, are you feeling okay? Asked Levi. How could you forget about your first sleepover at Hazel's house tonight? You've been talking about it for 2 weeks. A sleepover? Me? At Hazel's house? Thought Ivy to herself as all this new information began to sink in. Yes, my first sleepover at Hazel's house! Exclaimed Ivy as she jumped around the living room. Just stop talking about it already, said Levi as he flopped on the couch. I wish I could have a sleepover with my friends, but Mom and Dad said I'm too young. Ivy was so excited about her sudden increase in age that she wasn't really listening to Levi anymore. She ran up to her room and started to pack her overnight bag for Hazel's house. Mom, when are we leaving for my sleepover? Said Ivy, loving the way that sounded. We'll get going after you finish your chores, answered her mom. Okay, then we can get going, answered Ivy, looking around her room. My bed is made and my room is totally organized. Just then, Ivy's mom stepped in her doorway. Yeah, your room looks great, but you still have to put away the dishes in the dishwasher and fold the towels, said Ivy's mom. Ivy couldn't help but look at her mom with a look of surprise on her face. Mom, those aren't my chores. Those are Levi's chores, replied Ivy. I'm not old enough to do those things. Ivy's mom now had a surprised look on her face. Ivy, did you forget you're older than Levi all of a sudden? Asked her mom. Ivy quickly remembered her new age and just laughed it off. Of course I'm older than Levi, Mom, said Ivy. I just thought it was worth a try to get him to take care of some of my chores. Ivy headed downstairs, finished up those few chores, and told her mom when she was done. She still had a little time before she had to leave for her sleepover, so Ivy decided to play with Levi in the backyard. Ivy liked her role as the big sister. She liked how Levi looked up to her. It was the same way she looked up to him before they switched ages. Ivy liked that Levi listened to her suggestions now and kind of followed her lead a little bit. But then there were other things she didn't like about being the older kid. The extra chores for one thing, and always having to help Levi was another thing. Ivy, I need help getting my Frisbee. It's stuck way in that tree. Ivy, I need you to push me on the swing. Ivy, do you have any money saved to buy a treat if the ice cream truck comes by? It was helping Levi with all those little things and answering question after question when Ivy finally realized what it really meant to be a big sister. She learned that maybe being the bigger kid wasn't always easy or the most fun. Yes, you could do more things like have sleepovers, but you also had more responsibilities and more chores. But Ivy was quickly drawn away from that thought when her mom stepped out onto the deck and told her it was time to leave for her sleepover. Night, Levi, Ivy shouted as she ran toward the deck. She didn't know it right then because she was just too excited about her sleepover to think about anyone or anything else. But young Levi was feeling the same way she did when he left for his sleepover. Sad, upset, and all alone. As the night went on and hours passed, Ivy was having a great time at Hazel's house. But as it got closer and closer to bedtime, her thoughts turned to Levi and what she had told herself when Levi had left for his sleepover. She remembered thinking that Levi didn't care about her anymore. He didn't even ask to do their special bedtime handshake before he left. Then she remembered what she said she would do if she was older and in that situation. I'd be a good big sister. I'd give Levi a hug before I left and do our special bedtime handshake. I'd even read a bedtime story with him before I left. Hey friends, did Ivy do any of those things before she left? No, she didn't. Let's see what she does. It was then that Ivy knew what she had to do. She had Hazel's mom call her mom. In no time at all, Ivy was back home. No, she wasn't leaving her sleepover altogether, but she had some things she had to finish at her own house before she could really enjoy herself. Levi, called Ivy as she raced through the front door. Levi was so excited to see his older sister that he ran up and gave her a great big hug. Ivy then apologized for running out before her sleepover and for bragging about it so much, knowing how badly Levi wished he could have a sleepover too. I'm sorry, Levi, said Ivy. Do you think you have time to read a bedtime story with me and do our special bedtime handshake before I head back to Hazel's house? Absolutely, I'd love that, said Levi. You're the best big sister ever. So Ivy read a bedtime story to Levi, and they did their special bedtime handshake before her mom took her back to Hazel's house to finish up her sleepover. I am so proud of what you did tonight for Levi, said Ivy's mom as her daughter was getting out of the car at Hazel's house. Levi's right. You're a great big sister. Ivy gave her mom a big smile, saying, Levi would do the same for me if he was my big brother. I just know it. Then Ivy ran into Hazel's house, and after playing video games, eating popcorn and candy, and watching a movie outside under the stars, she fell asleep. Ivy was sleeping peacefully when all of a sudden she felt herself being woken up by a hand on her shoulder. It was Levi. And he was old. Well, at least older than Ivy. "Levi, what are you doing here?" asked Ivy, realizing it was all a dream and she was back in her living room. "Did you leave your sleepover?" "Not exactly," answered Levi. "I'm sorry for just running out to my sleepover and not saying a nice goodnight to you, and for bragging about it so much, knowing how badly you wished you had a sleepover too." Ivy felt a tear run down her cheek as Levi went on. "Do you think you have time to read a bedtime story with me?" asked Levi. "And do our special bedtime handshake before I head back to my sleepover?" "I would love that," whispered Ivy as she gave Levi a hug. "I always knew it." "Knew what?" asked Levi as he sat down next to Ivy. "That you'd come back and that you're the best big brother ever," Ivy said as they snuggled up together to read their bedtime story. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the story and learned a little something too.
And since we know everyone has their own story, we'd love to hear yours.
If you have an idea for a Lively Lewis story, leave a comment on our Apple Podcast review page with 5 stars, your idea, and your little one's name.
Then maybe our next adventure will be with you.
Until our next Storytime Hangout.
Thanks for listening. We can't wait to share another fun Lively Lewis story with you.